Dr. Hall, my name is Marcus Galloway Sr. This is my persuasive speech on the incarceration of nonviolent offenders. So I want to ask a question: what is a nonviolent crime? Nonviolent crimes are those crimes that do not involve the use of any force or injury to another person. The seriousness of nonviolent crimes is usually measured in terms of economic damage or loss to the victim. We have to realize what's legal today can possibly be illegal tomorrow, and what's illegal today can possibly be legal tomorrow. Oftentimes when we enter court systems, we're told the question, do we swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God? On this persuasive speech, I would like us all to tell the truth on how we really feel about nonviolent crimes and the issues of mass incarceration as it pertains to US of A. We have to realize that there's a lack of understanding. There's a lack of understanding. I recall the TV show Family Matters where Steve Urkel often said, did I do that? Oftentimes when we face people that commit crimes, they have this notion, did I do that? As it pertains, they don't fully understand or grasp the concept that they actually done something wrong, hence non-violent crimes. They have no recollection of what they really do. So there's a miseducation pertaining the law and the rights that pertains to U.S. citizens and facing the incarcerations of many of our brothers and sisters that share the flag, the red, the white, and the blue. We have to realize also that there's a financial thing that plays a part in whether a person is convicted or deemed innocent. If you have finances, then you can afford a good lawyer who can dedicate a amount of time to a case that's needed. If you don't have the financial means, then you'll have to settle for a public defender, hence a person with a greater caseload who can't really dedicate as much time to you as you feel like you deserve. So we usher in this thing called social status, the social status that comes along with every case. It's not what you know, it's not how much money you have, but at times it can be who you know, the environments that you grow up in. It can determine whether an incident is considered an accident or it's indeed a crime based on your social settings. So I usher into this thing called the miseducation of freedom. I find the miseducation of freedom as defined as the freedom is a falsified belief that is manipulated by laws that are not meant to protect but control the citizens. There's a miseducation of freedom, and I realize that manipulation can come in so many ways. The USA is not the land of free, but people face bondage based on the laws that are meant to not protect but control. The land of the free is indeed not so free. The land of the free, I believe, is a false advertisement based on the incarceration of nonviolent offenders being accused of things of all sorts of the matter. So the U.S. is on a rapid growth of the prison population, hence the miseducation of freedom. The staggering numbers, according to Prison Policy Initiative, the U.S. is top of the chain when it comes down to incarceration, with a staggering number of 2.3 million citizens being incarcerated. We realize that according to Prison Policy Initiative, there are 1,719 state prisons, 102 federal prisons, 901 juvenile correctional facilities, 3,163 local jails, nonviolent offenders, as well as military prisons, immigration detention facilities, and civil commitment centers and prisons in the U.S. territories. We are building a structure of facilities to house inmates before they even commit crimes. Hence, nonviolent offenders already find themselves in a defeated state before they even commit the crime. Francis Samuel Smith, he wrote the key phrase American anthem, "My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty." That second stanza, liberty. Liberty then is defined as the state of being free within a society from oppressive restrictions. imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, and political views. This thing called liberty is fleeting in society because we are struck with bondage around every corner. Hosea, the 4th chapter, the 6th verse, in the good book, the Bible itself, it says, according that my people perish for lack of knowledge. Another version says, my people perish for a lack of understanding. According to the Newsom's 2015 State of the Amendment survey, about 1/3 of Americans cannot name any of the rights guaranteed by the First Amendment, the U.S. Constitution, according to the Fifth Amendment's protection against self-incrimination. So now we have this thing called the Miranda rights. Many of us, we don't fully understand the Miranda rights. You know the Miranda rights. If you ever face any interaction with the law enforcement, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to have an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, my brother, one will be provided for you. The officer then says, do you understand these rights as I have read them off to you? Now do you wish to speak to me? I find in my research analyzed by Richard Rogers, he concluded that more than 800 different versions of Miranda warnings are used by police across the United States. They have many different renditions of these Miranda rights, but no one is getting it right from the get-go. So do you really understand your Miranda rights? Re-entering society for a nonviolent offender can be detrimental to society in itself. Internal damage comes with this thing, and we face mental challenges by nonviolent offenders being mixed with people who committed heinous crimes. Mental damage, mental health care, and mental abuse alike face nonviolent offenders' rehabilitation into society. The rehabilitation of nonviolent offenders rarely occurs due to mental illness, a greater chance of becoming a career criminal, and suffering from a broken family structure. Law is no longer favorable for those who've been convicted of nonviolent crimes, and I didn't do that. It is not enough when it faces people who've been incarcerated, because incarceration tends to overflow into the streets, because once you get into a prison system, you're seeking protection and you join all kinds of gangs. So nonviolent offenders, they find themselves lobbying up against people for protection, so the gangs then follow them over into the home environment. Now the family, they faces conviction all in itself with nonviolent offenders, because once a nonviolent offender goes into jail, the family tends to suffer because that nonviolent offender is incarcerated. Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to do these things? Who's going to tend to the kids? Who's going to see that the family is taken care of? The nonviolent offender faces the same convictions in itself. So prison is not the solution. It is hurting society as itself. It creates harsher crimes for those that are seeking to better themselves in a society that has them crippled. So prison reform is the answer. Prison reform is the cure. Prison reform has to happen, and it has to happen now, ladies and gentlemen. We are ignoring the real issues in society. We're overlooking addictions that pertain nonviolent offenders. Nonviolent offenders, the number one cause that they are incarcerated are because drug addictions that stems from childhood hurts, abuse, dangers that's detrimental to society in itself. So there's an evolution that comes with nonviolent offenders. They turn and they translate over into tougher crimes. The inception of the Get Tough movement, it infiltrated a period where politicians had to crack down on drug addictions, and these crimes are now continue to build. So now why would you go to prison? Why would you go to school if you can go to prison? We usher into the school to prison pipeline, because school versus prison is not popular to go to school when you can go to prison in society, because they're funneling all the money into prisons in itself. Nonviolent crimes tend to be judgment calls. You can have the same case, the same person, but different outcomes pertaining to the judge and the kind of day that they're having. It's a coin toss, if you will, at times that society faces. Now I want to talk to you about the Khalif Browder story. Khalif Browder, he was convicted and he spent 17 straight months in solitary confinement. It played on his mental and it led to him committing suicide. Prison reform has to be the answer. We have to realize that prison reform, it has to start right now. Oftentimes they break the law in order to enforce the law. We realize that this thing in prison reform, it can save over 80.5 million and decrease the prison population, and we have the Reinvestment Act signed by Governor Larry Hogan that is going to start a chain reaction in order to eliminate the mass incarceration of nonviolent offenders. Questions, comments, or concerns? This has been my persuasive speech. I pray that you have been persuaded.